Hi, everybody. My name is Adrienne Coleman. I live in Lebanon, Maine, which nobody knows where it is. So, the best way I can describe it close to actual civilization is it's about an hour from Portland, Maine, and we are about 2 hours north from Boston. I'm starting this channel for a lot of reasons. I'll be sharing um, diet, nutrition, exercise, but really the main goal of starting this channel is to network with those in the breast cancer community. Um, I am a mom of one little boy named Jack. He's 2.5, and I'm married to a wonderful man named Max. Um, I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2023, of April of 2023. Um, I will say that I found my lump doing a self breast exam. I was actually having some right breast pain, which caused me to do a breast exam. And breast pain is actually fairly atypical for breast cancer. Typically, tumors aren't painful, but some can be. So initially, when I saw an oncologist, they suspected that it was likely benign, and but still wanted me to get in for a mammogram. So I'm also the director of the Cancer Center at Wentworth Douglas. We are a Mass General Cancer Center, so I was fortunate to have a lot of connections. And so I was able to get in for the mammogram the next day, which I went to by myself. If I can make any recommendation, bring a breast friend, no pun intended. And it was there. I had the mammogram. They brought me back in to take more pictures. And I just kind of knew, I think instinctively as people, as women, we just know when something is wrong. So then I was told that we would need to do an ultrasound of the breast. The radiologist came in, and basically I looked at her, and I said, "What do you think?" And she said, "I'm not liking what I'm seeing." So, at that time, my little guy was barely 1 year old. And, the first thought I had was, why me? And am I going to die? And everybody tells you it's going to be okay, but there's no guarantees. I was told that the tumor was quite large, and that I would need to have an MRI of the breast done immediately. Additionally, I would need to have a CAT scan to see if the cancer had spread anywhere else. Fortunately, they were able to biopsy my breast while I was there getting an ultrasound. They did an ultrasound guided biopsy. And then the next day, I was able to complete an MRI of the breast, which just showed in more detail what they suspected to be a large, incredibly large mass that basically covered most of my right breast. The waiting, so for any of you newly diagnosed, the waiting is by far the worst part. My best advice is to surround yourself with family and friends during that time. Remain optimistic, because what I learned in this journey, that until it's official, it's just, there's no point in thinking about it. And trust me, I did not follow those directions. I did the complete opposite. I Googled everything. I read about every worst case scenario. I read about my tumor size. And this was before I even had a confirmed pathology. So easier said than done. I think the wealth of information we have at our fingertips is both a good thing and a bad thing. And I think, sometimes as consumers, we know too much. So my MRI was quite ominous. And essentially, when my mammogram came back, it was like a BI-RADS 5, which is, essentially, we're pretty sure / positive this is cancer. So the pathology typically takes a week to come back. And I was diagnosed on like a Thursday. I had my MRI on like a Friday, and then I couldn't get in for a CT of the chest, abdomen, pelvis until a Monday. So the weekend was one of the longest weekends of my life. But what I did try to do was stay busy. I, hung out with my family. I tried to focus on other things. And then Monday morning came, and I was scheduled for a CT of the chest, abdomen, pelvis, as well as a bone scan to see if I had metastatic disease. And as somebody, as at that time I was 37, and I just was thinking, is this it? Am I gonna die? Is this gonna be my story? And so each of those were ordered stat. The CT, chest, abdomen, pelvis, probably took about 45 minutes. The bone scan was a lot more intense, not because you can feel it, but it's literally scanning your whole body. So each part takes, that was upwards of like an hour and a half on the table. When I was leaving, I asked the tech, if she could tell me anything, and they can't. They're lovely people, but they can't tell you. So luckily, like I said, I work in a cancer center. So I went to my oncologist, and as soon as the scans came up, we looked at them together. The chest showed what we thought, which was technically metastatic because it had spread to at least what they could see 2 lymph nodes. But contained within the breast, there was no evidence of metastatic disease in my abdomen or pelvis. And typically where breast cancer goes is, obviously it starts in the breast, but the most common areas for breast cancer to travel to are the lungs, liver, bones, and brain. Bones being very, very common. And so being able to take a breath after those scans came back, I enjoyed that moment. I knew I had a long road ahead of me, but for anybody starting on this journey, you need to celebrate any small win. So that's the beginning of my story. That same week, my pathology came back, confirming invasive ductal carcinoma. My pathology was ER positive, PR positive, and HER2 negative, which, from a prognosis standpoint, my stage wasn't ideal, but being, ER, PR positive and not triple negative, there are so many options, but that just allowed me to receive more targeted therapy. So that was kind of week 1. The other thing that I was set up for was a consultation for a second opinion at Dana-Farber. Our doctors work really closely with folks at Mass General Cancer Center, as well as doctors at Dana-Farber. And my doctor referred me to an oncologist there. I went down there that same week. And I was potentially eligible for some clinical trials, but it would have taken a couple of more weeks to start treatment. And because of the size of my tumor, I felt like it was more important to start chemo, which I started that Friday. The oncologist in Boston agreed, and really the clinical trial wouldn't have changed my treatment a lot. So I was told that I'd be starting chemo. I went down to Boston on a Thursday to see the medical oncologist, and I was set to start chemo on that Friday. And my first treatment was adriamycin. So that is the beginning of my journey. And I'm going to share every single step with you. I'm going to share what I found to be most helpful during chemo. Um, and we'll start there. And then I'll talk about the second phase of my journey, which was a double mastectomy. Um, I'll also talk about my genetic testing because I did come back with a genetic abnormality called a CHEK2 mutation, which is less common than BRCA, less talked about. So I think it's important to share what that is and what that means for me and my family and how important genetic testing is. And then I'll share, my journey through radiation, um, and then where I am now, which is on two different oral drugs, one called Verzenio, and one called Arimidex. Both are targeted therapies. Since my tumor was very ER positive driven, basically I am on Arimidex, Verzenio, Lupron, and Zometa. Zometa just helps to prevent bone mets, as well as a number of other things, which I can go into later. And I'm also on Lupron, which really does kind of shut down your ovaries, and it pushes you into menopause so that you're not producing estrogen, which has its own fun side effects. But like I said, I want to take this one story at a time. And really, I think the best advice I could give anybody that's newly diagnosed is take it one day at a time, take it one appointment at a time. And it's like a puzzle. Until you have all of the pieces, you can't know what your story will be. I also think it's so important to remember that even if you are stage 4, there are so many different treatments and people are living so much longer. And so to not feel that this is the end, no matter what diagnosis you are, and that everybody has a journey, everybody responds differently, but that there are so many wonderful clinical studies going on. And, I've worked in oncology for 15 years, to see the amount of progress they've made with treatments as well as, survival. So I think my best advice is trust your team, get a second opinion, and listen to everything your clinical team says, because they know best. And know that we can do really hard things. So in my next episode, I will be talking more about my chemotherapy, that experience. This is something I thought about doing while I was going through it, but for me, I was trying to still work, and I had a 1-year-old, and I just wanted to put the energy I had toward my family. But I do feel I have a lot to share. I feel like I can help a lot of people. And, in my second one, I will be talking about chemotherapy, and I'll also be talking about products that I found really helpful, and other things that really helped me through my journey. So please stay on, and tuned in for episode 2, which will be chemo. Talk soon.